All right, welcome. This is Chapter 1, Part 1, the basics of nutrition. I wanted to begin by showing you what your textbook looks like online so that when you do go to look at the e-textbook or the online textbook, I wanted to draw your attention to two things. Number one, you see two different numbers. Well, actually, this is the cover of it. So remember, you get to your online textbook through your McGraw-Hill Connect account, which we spoke about in the introductory video. And then also, when I go through the lectures and sometimes in announcements, I'll draw your attention to, oh, page 2 in the textbook or page 1. Notice that there are two different numbering systems. Right here, you see that chapter 1 begins on the E version, page 17, but it's page 1 of the textbook. So whenever I draw your attention to certain things within the textbook, I'll give you two different numbers and to draw your attention to that. So oftentimes that can confuse students as to, oh, which page number? I looked at that page and it wasn't there. But you see right here where it says textbook, hard copy textbook page 3 or online textbook page 18. All right. So please just bear that in mind. So let's dive in. Nutrition. There are quizzes at the beginning of each slide set and also in the textbook. I highly recommend you looking at that. The answers to those and the answers to the critical thinking questions and the practice tests are also in the back of each chapter on the online textbook. All right, so make sure you draw your attention to that. Here's our learning outcomes. And if you are a note taker, which I highly recommend that you do, you can print the PowerPoint slides, which are different than these. The lecture slides are going to be slightly different from the PowerPoint slides that I give you, but you can use them to take notes. And I highly recommend you do that. All right, so let's dive in. Concept number one, the basics. A diet is a person's normal, usual pattern of food intake, which is different than a meal. A meal is the specific singular instance of consuming food at that moment, whereas a diet is a person's usual pattern, like, oh, I'm keto, or oh, I'm vegetarian, or oh, I am, standard American diet, whatever it is. You guys know what food is. Food is the nourishment that we consume that contains nutrients. And we're going to be doing a much deeper dive today into each individual nutrient and going over the different types, macro, micro, and all of that. However, we are not born with the ability to choose healthy, quote unquote, foods. We are born with taste buds that do help us to determine bad tasting and good tasting, which is supposed to help us not to consume bad or soured foods. But a person's food choices is influenced by a lot of things. Our mood, our culture, our ethnicity, our religion, food availability, addictive behaviors of sugar and so forth, our health beliefs. So there's a lot that goes into food and diet choices. It is not always easy, and that's why some of the leading causes of death that you see here in the United States are due to poor diet choices, poor habits related to eating. So you see here that heart disease here makes up about 20% of deaths. And so that is equated to hypertension, sodium in foods, lipid level, cholesterol level. You see here that cancer, certain types of cancers are also really high. And that is due to alcohol consumption, ultra high processed foods, uh, high sugar intake, carbohydrate intake, the blackening of processed meats and that kind of thing. So you see here, stroke, sodium in foods, Alzheimer's disease, which is aluminum foods, diabetes, carbohydrates in foods, kidney disease, also related to alcohol, drug abuse, but mainly um, diabetes here, all contribute to some of the major leading causes of death in the United States. So nutrition is very important, and that's one of the main reasons why I personally got into nutrition and dietetics because diabetes is rampant in my family. And I'm like, why is that? How can I combat that? How can I help other people from not having to go through this devastating disease? So, nutrition is the study of nutrients and how the body uses them. And nutrients essentially are simply chemicals. Well, I don't want to say simply because it is complicated, but they are chemicals. So, chemistry is an essential part of that. And the reason why we have these nutrients and the reason why we need them is because every cell in our body needs nutrients, needs these nutrients in order to function and maintain overall metabolism. And that whole physiological process of how the body works is related to nutrients that we consume through metabolism. So there are six main classes of nutrients. You have carbohydrates, and you're going to hear me throughout this semester talk a lot about carbohydrates because out of all of these, carbohydrates are the one is the nutrient that I believe is the most misunderstood, the most addictive, and the one that we are having the most controversy. Like, well, I don't want to say controversy, the most research in at the moment in relation to diabetes and obesity, lipids, proteins, vitamins, minerals, and water. And you see here how they stack up as far as quantity within the human body. So very, very essential. Everybody gives fat a bad rap. Oh, don't eat fat. Don't do anything, solid fats. Well, when we dive into the fat chapter, you will see that there are different types of fats. And look, it is essential. It is an essential nutrient along with protein and water and vitamins and minerals in our body. So uh, it is essential. So when we look at each one of these, carbohydrate is mainly used for energy. Okay, your body loves carbohydrate. Your body can do without carbohydrates, though, as we will talk about when we get to that chapter. Lipids are also known as fat, is used in every in every cell in your body, in overall growth and development. It is essential for certain vitamins for them to be absorbed and to be made. Sorry. Protein is also essential for cellular growth or development, tissue regeneration, transporting nutrients. Fluid balance is very important when it comes in within the body related to protein. And then you have your micronutrients, your vitamins and minerals, which are just as essential because these are parts of the chemicals that we spoke about earlier, metabolism, that are needed for every metabolic process in your body, from nerve impulses to blood filtration to cellular growth, chemical messengers within the nervous system all relate and revolve around vitamins and minerals. And then, of course, essentially water. Okay, the substance in which every chemical process is conducted in, transporting substances, the chemical reactions of metabolism in the body. So, when we look at why these are essential and why we need them in our diet, they must be supplied by the food that we get. If not, then we have a deficiency, and that can lead to ill health and nutritional deficiencies, which we will talk about. Uh, Table 1.2. Let me see if I can pull that one up real quick. See if we can find it. Oh, that was, no, that's figure 1.2. Let's see. Here we go. uh, Talking about the essential nutrients. Yes, and I wanted to speak on this too. So this is on page 6 of your textbook or on page 18 of the online textbook. So, of course, water, essential. These are the essential vitamins that you need, and some of them are what we call fat soluble. Vitamin A, D, E, and K are fat soluble, meaning that you need fat in your diet, in your body, in order to even be able to metabolize A, D, E, and K. And then you see minerals here. Holy cow. Calcium in every bone in your body. Sodium, essential for every nerve impulse in your body. Iron is in on every red blood cell on your body right now and is part of hemoglobin, which is transporting oxygen throughout your body right now. So you see why these are essential. And then here you have proteins. We will dive into each of these in great detail when we get to these particular chapters. But you see the amino acids that build or that make proteins. And we will definitely be talking about all of those as well. There are phytochemicals, which are not nutrients, but they do aid in the body in helping to decrease the effects that certain processed foods can have on the body. So you hear things like antioxidants and their cancer preventing properties. You have like caffeine and other alkaloids and um, beta carotene and lycopene and capsaicin, all of these different types of phytochemicals that are not nutrients, but they do aid in overall metabolism. Okay. When, back in 1994, and I remember when this act was enacted, it revolutionized the supplement industry and the foods industry. So make sure you read this particular page within your textbook talking about this act that allowed supplements to not be defined as a food, but as a supplement. Okay. Um, well, it allowed manufacturers, excuse me, to classify certain supplements as a food and not a drug, which, in other words, made the whole regulatory process a whole lot easier and more cost effective for food companies. So it really revolutionized the world there when it came to diets and supplements. Okay. When we look at how our lifestyle affects our overall nutrition, there are many things to consider. Okay. A person's lifestyle is their choice. Okay. Their dietary habits, their physical habits, their drug use or non-drug use, their environmental conditions, their overall psychological outlook on life. All of these things um, can either help or hinder the body as far as inflammatory processes, stress, the fight or flight hormones in the body. So we'll dive into these as we go throughout the semester as well about how you can improve your overall lifestyle and decrease your risk factors. You see here that over the past few decades, how certain food products have decreased in consumption or increased in consumption. And I think that has a lot to do with how our society in general, our culture in general, is moving from agriculture to more urban areas, and less people are living on farms. Um, Less people are physically active, so it does change our overall lifestyle. Mhm. And this is the main focus of the Healthy People 2030 goals. Every 10 years, the United States Department of Health and Human Services comes out with strategic goals that influence research projects and policies. And you see here how they are structured towards improving lifestyle choices. So, not necessarily, well, as well as providing healthy food choices that trying to get to the preventable factor. Okay. We want to catch people or educate people to prevent these diseases instead of just treating them proactively. The next section, pages 10 through 11 in your textbook, have to do with metrics. And there is math in nutrition. There is math within healthcare and biology, if you haven't noticed. So I'm sure you have. And a lot of nutrition is in metrics. So please make sure you take just a couple of moments to review the metrics, okay? Because when we look at nutrition, it is standardized by the kilocalorie, or what's known as a calorie. It is the measure of energy in a food. And it is one way in which we measure food. We also look at grams of the macronutrients, as we'll talk about when well, actually, let's do that now, right here. We talk about grams, see how carbohydrates, 4 calories per gram, protein, 4 calories per gram, fat, 9 calories per gram. Okay. And as we progress through the semester, you'll also hear me talk about how it's not so much calories per se that we need to focus on as far as overnutrition and obesity in the United States, but the type of macronutrient that we consume. So, but we'll dive into that. All right. And just because you see here fat, oh my gosh, it's twice as much as carb or protein, that means it must be bad. No, it's not. Okay. There's no food that is bad. It just means that has more energy in it. Okay. Because remember, kilocalorie is only the amount of energy. Okay. So when we talk about macronutrients, macro meaning large or has energy. So these are your larger nutrients, not large so much in, well, chemically, structurally, but they also have energy. Okay, they provide energy. And these are your carbohydrates, your fats, and your proteins. And then you have micro, meaning smaller or no energy. Okay, meaning they do not have calories. Carbs, fats, proteins do have calories, meaning they have energy. Vitamins and minerals and water do not have calories, which means they do not have energy, but they are just as essential as we spoke about earlier. Okay. There are no good or bad foods. Um, yes, everything in moderation, but we there again, that is a growing area within nutritional and dietetics research, focusing on the macronutrients, carbs, proteins, and fats. So we'll dive into that as we go throughout the semester. All right, talked about water. Here you see here how you have a bowl of rice, milk, broccoli, and a chocolate covered donut or cake type donut. Looks like it is frosted. Yeah, frosted donut. And most foods are going to have a combination of protein, fat, carb, and water and other essential energy. Okay. Other than just butter. Okay. And even butter can be, butter is simply fat, but it still has water in it. It still has can have additives in it. So when we look at overall nutrition or foods in general, we look at the whole aspect of it. And you see here how it's broken down. The bowl of rice has about 160 calories. The milk here has about 70 calories. The broccoli, very low in calories. See, only about 20 calories. But wow, look at the amount of water in that broccoli. And that's why it has very little calories. Okay. And also look at there's a lot of calcium, okay, for that little bit of broccoli. Okay. And then when we look at the donut, when we look at the pink donut, look at the amount of fat in that donut compared to no fat in rice. This is fat-free milk, so no fat has been removed. And then no fat in broccoli because most vegetables, unless it's an avocado, there's a couple more, are going to be, have very little fat. So when we look at foods in general, they're going to be a mixture of all of the macro and micronutrients. Your one of your nutrition projects, we're going to focus on the different food groups, and we'll be diving in here to myplate.gov. This is one of the promotional aspects we talked about earlier within nutrition, how the research is based around it, and it's a good educational tool for the general public. Okay. So as I said before, there are no good or bad foods. Okay, we'll dive in here a little bit in part two, talking about empty calories, nutrient dense, and how we can make better choices related to foods and talk about some of the research behind that. So we will end part one right here for right now, and we will pick up where we left off with part two.